Buenas tardes. It's a joy to be with you. You have heard this tape this morning, and it's a good general introduction to the topic we're discussing today. I would, as much as possible, like to make this meeting a very interactive meeting so that we ask questions and we handle the points that you feel are most appropriate to you. And that's why there was a brief tape which I will summarize again so that we understand what the topic is about, and then we can make it a really interactive exchange between us and cover fundamentals of the topic that we are working with. But before that, let me ask, how many among us do not practice transcendental meditation? Okay. Okay. How many have never heard about Ramayana? Okay. How many don't know what Veda is or have never heard about Veda? We should have a private meeting. Okay. So, let me repeat some of the things maybe that are basics to be able to appreciate what the topic is about. Veda is an ancient literature, as has been said in the tapes and has been alluded to by David Lynch, that has been there for endless times, we don't know, but at least thousands and thousands of years. And it has been kept through a tradition of pundits, they are called, which are people who learn this from father to son to children, etc., throughout the ages. They used to recite it by heart for all these years. And up to today, it is available as an oral tradition, but of course has been also written into books. So Veda really is a set of books which could fill a big library. It's not a small amount. It's not just one epic or one story, but you can fill out a whole library with what these books are about. What is interesting is that some of these books describe practical aspects of life, which are very relevant to health, for example. There is an aspect called Ayurveda, which deals with health and how to eat properly and how to use plants and herbs and how to have a good daily routine, what time you do what, at what time you do the other thing, or seasonal routine, at what time of the year there are most appropriate things to do, and also how to treat problems, and they are generally divided into imbalances of the physiology. And it's really a very ancient knowledge, which is very profound, and now is also very much used in India. It's the #1 medical system, and it has been recognized by the UNO as a heritage and as one of those important medical aspects of our time. It really uses very natural approach to health. So when you say Ayurveda, it's part of Veda. There is also something you're very familiar with. It's yoga. Yoga, people practice physical exercises, and you're also familiar, most of us, with transcendental meditation. And this yoga is part of the Veda. So we have now Ayurveda and yoga. These are two aspects of Veda. And like this, you have something for architecture. For example, Sthapatya Veda, it says how to build the houses so they are in tune with the laws of nature, with the rising sun, with the magnetic fields of the earth, and all of that. There are very, very detailed aspects of how to live in a house and how to, where to put the bedroom, where to put the head, and all of that. So that's a third aspect that you may be familiar with. There is Gandharva Veda, which deals with music and harmony. And even then, it deals with this with respect to the times of the day. There are some music which is better in the morning, some music in the noon, some music during that season, some music for other things. And so there are very practical aspects of the Veda like this. And there are other aspects that are also theoretical about philosophy of life. And you have things like Vedanta and Nyaya and all of that that speak about how life is to be lived and what is the purpose of living and like that. And so these are different aspects of the Veda. Some more aspects which are like stories. They tell stories like epics, and epics, Ulysses and this and that we know. There are also epics, and Ramayana in particular is an epic that tells the story of a king whose name was Ram, and he was exiled in the forest, and he went with Sita. You have heard this already, part of it on the tape. And then he went through lots of adventures and then came back home and created a healthy society, which is called Ramraj, which we can translate into heaven on earth, so ideal life and ideal living. So that Ramayana is another aspect of Veda. But there are also aspects of Veda that are totally ununderstandable, and particularly the main ones, such as Rig Veda, Sama Veda, Yajur Veda, Atharva Veda. If you were to translate them, and many did translate them, there are many PhD degrees that I know have been given in different universities, like even at Harvard, at Yale, about what could this mean? Why is this being there for all these thousands of years and it's being repeated? And yet when you translate it and read it, you don't find the essential meaning of it that be really significant. They do talk about people going to war, or there is cows being taken to the pastures, or different kinds of stories, but when you look at it carefully as a whole, it doesn't really make a complete good meaning. And so Veda, the term Veda itself means knowledge. So what this knowledge is the big question. So we know there are some practical aspects, and there are some others that we don't know about. When Maharshi Mahesh Yogi came from the holy tradition of Vedic masters, the rishis of India, he brought a completely new, in a way new, of course, interpretation of what Veda is. He said we should not be concerned with the meaning of Veda, but with its vibrational value, the sound value. So that the effects of Veda knowledge is from the sound rather than from the meaning. And more important than the sound is the silence between the sounds. And he talked about the structure of Veda. Some of the things I'm saying now you might be hearing a second time, because the tape had some aspects of it, but it's good to put it back in a context. So what does it mean the sound of the Veda is important? You have heard Dr. Hagelin talk about how the unified field, which is the source of all aspects of creation, which is the basis of all the laws of nature, is now more and more understood in terms of vibrational aspects and M theory and vibration of the string and all of that. And so now the dynamics, which means the vibration or reverberation in the field, which is the source of everything, create the superficial or surface, if you like, aspects of reality, which we call matter and material aspects, such as electrons, particles, nuclei of the electrons, molecules, and then like that into all kinds of objects and surface objects. So this is how we can understand that the vibrational value is at the basis of the whole creation. So all that comes out that we see as physical is a vibration. It's like waves in the ocean of that field. There is a field, and that field, when it vibrates, it creates different energies that combine together, and they appear to us as being atoms and particles, etc. Now, in our life, what we want to know and understand are the laws of nature. The laws of nature means everything that organizes our life. We want to know how we get electricity, how we can live better, what is the cause and effect, why we fall sick, why we can be happy, why things happen to us. And so that is what we generally call knowledge. Knowledge has all kinds of aspects on a personal level, on a social level, on a scientific level, chemistry, biology, all kinds of cosmology, all kinds of knowledge. We want to know. We want to know things. We want to know where we are, where we come from, who we are, what can we achieve. And this desire to know is an inherent in us. So there are different approaches to this knowledge. There is what we call the subjective approach, and there is the objective approach. Modern science tries to understand all of this universe through what we call an objective approach. An objective approach is an approach that depends on scientific experimentation. So we take objects and situations and we analyze them and see how we can create cause and effect and study this. For example, if I let this pen fall, it will fall at a certain speed. Scientists has figured out why it falls at this speed, because there is attraction between this mass and the mass of the Earth, and you can exactly say what will happen. So when you know something, you can predict exactly what will happen. What do we want to know is the laws that determine the behavior of objects, but also the behavior of people. So science is not only trying to understand anymore the behavior of objects, but also our own behavior. In psychology, we study the behavior of people. You do something, you get a response. So psychology, which used to be, and behavior and social behavior, that used to be an art, like a philosophy, is becoming a science because we understand that there are laws that construct the behavior of things and determine how things interact with each other, so that you have an effect and gives a certain result. So when we use the term laws of nature, we are about all that determines life and living, and why we have good chance or not chance, why we are lucky, we are unlucky. Is this whole universe a big disorderly chaos, or out of chaos maybe even some order comes, or is it all very orderly and systematic? And when you study the laws of nature, you find that there is order in creation. There is potentiality for freedom, etc. We can talk about this. But you can see that everything obeys the object. If I let this one pen fall under the same circumstances, it will always fall exactly in the same way at the same speed. So, you know, you study the physics, you study the chemistry, you find that there are very specific laws of nature that determine the behavior of objects. In the same way, there is very specific and complete laws of nature that determine the behavior of life as a whole and its evolution and its progress and the interactions between people and between societies, and the whole evolution of life is in an orderly fashion set by these laws of nature. So when we want to have knowledge, all of the knowledge we can summarize in knowing the laws of nature, knowing how nature is constructed and what determines the behavior of everything that is in life, that is in nature. This method of knowing is the objective knowledge. We call it objective because it refers to the object. We study the object. There is another way we know things and we value things, and that is our subjective knowledge. Subjective knowledge means how our brain, our intellect, how our logic allows us to make decisions about things. We have for example, mathematics. Mathematics is not really an objective science in a sense. It's a science that depends on logic. Who has created mathematics? It's not something you see when you go to a store or something you find in the planets or something that you see anywhere. Mathematics, it's all a creation of human mind, human intellect. We sit and say, okay, I make an equation that 1 + 1 = 2. And they decide, because now I can understand if I bring one apple from the right, one apple from the left, I can say I have 2 apples on the table. That is logic described in equations. And that logic comes from where? From human perception, from human analysis. So it does come from the brain. So ultimately, logic is very much a subjective thing, which has become documented and has become approved as universal because we all agree on the same thing. And therefore, it's very, very real, and it helps. And also it helps because we find that it helps us understand our universe. So what we have created as a subjective knowledge from within ourselves seems to correspond to how the universe works and helps us to understand our universe. This was one of the big enigmas of even very great scientists, Einstein and others, when they were discussing, and you can see their writing, is that it's fine that mathematics works, but the problem is why it works. How come it works? How come I can sit and make some writings on a paper based on my logic and predict how the universe is and how it should be set and how the planets should work and things that I've never been to, but I can understand them. So there is something more about knowledge than the objective knowledge. But that also depends on the instrument that we are using. In objective knowledge, we have different instruments. We have, a weight, balance, we have a microscope, we have a telescope, we have whatever machines we have. And the more the machine is precise and the more it is able to go in depth into its analysis, the more it will give us a clear idea about our objective universe. So if this microscope can only see on the surface, it will show the surface. But if it is very powerful and you connect it with a computer and with electronic machines and all that, it becomes an electron microscope and it becomes very powerful. And it starts seeing very fine aspects of nature. You can actually see them. So the more the instrument is precise in the objective reality, the more it will give us precise and correct description about nature. We have an instrument also for subjectivity, and that is our human brain. And our human brain is also an instrument. That instrument has the ability to compute the laws of nature also. And the more this instrument is precise, and the more it's clear, and the more it's powerful, the more it will be able to detect actually the laws of nature. That's how, with this instrument, we are creating mathematics and logics and decision making. With this instrument and the whole physiology that we have, we make decisions about our legal laws, our national laws, about decisions about what profession to take, who to marry, which bank account to put our money. All of these things can be dependent on, of course, some objective understanding and objective science and objective knowledge, but mostly we decide about things due to our logic, our intelligence, our subjectivity. And this subjectivity depends on the quality of our nervous system and how it functions. If this nervous system is tired and it has stress on it, it's like your microscope has some dirt on it, and then it cannot see anymore with clarity what it's trying to examine. If this instrument is pure and clean and working perfectly, it has a huge capacity. Now the question that we have is what capacity it has. How much we can go, how far we can go as human beings. And that is really where the research is showing us that it can go really very, very far. The fact that we can understand the entire universe with this instrument is an indication that this instrument is quite powerful. Now, Dr. Hagelin talked about going to the unified field. So this instrument actually can go to the unified field. This is what all of those who practice transcendental meditation have experienced. They experience that the human nervous system can be settled down, settled, and its activity become very, very quiet and soft, yet it remains very awake and alert, and then experience the unified field. So this is what we have. We have this on this side, the unified field, and this side we have transcendental meditation. It allows the mind to settle down, and experience the unified field. When you experience the unified field, you become familiar with it. Now, once you're familiar with this field, you discover that it's not a flat field, but it has vibrations within it. This is why the analogy with what Dr. Hagelin was saying, that the M theory and the string theory explains that there is vibration and the strings dilate and vibrate and all of that, and this is how they become the atoms and the forces of nature and the DNA and the whole body and all of that. But our brain, our human nervous system can go there. And when it goes there, not only it experiences the absolute pure silence within, but it experiences the dynamics within it, which means those vibrations within it. And these are the vibrations that create all the universe. These are the laws of nature that we're talking about. So when Maharishi says that Veda is a description of the laws of nature in terms of its vibrational value, this is exactly what he means. It means we are experiencing how the dynamics of the unified field take place. Unified field vibrates, and we feel those vibrations, and they express them. So when you hear a Vedic chanting or a Vedic sound, or you look at these books that we said are the books of the Veda, you're not really looking necessarily at their surface meaning to translate them and to understand them, because translating them give only a very surface aspect of it. You are actually experiencing the laws of nature. Now, the laws of nature, when they express themselves, they don't express themselves chaotically. The proof is they create a universe, and they create us, and they create our life, and they create our societies, and they create ultimately everything we have. So they manifest themselves through specific structures that are orderly, and they have functions that are absolutely also orderly. And Maharishi says that all of these structures and functions are found in the Veda. And he has highlighted 40 aspects of the Veda. You have, I think, in the sheets that were distributed. These are the 40 aspects. And we talked about yoga, this, then the other, etc. And these are the different ways the nature actually manifests itself with different functions for each. Yoga is unifying, this distinguishing and deciding. You have heard this on this short tape that was presented. I'm just now bringing the logic again to our attention of why is it that we can say that these are the vibrations of natural law. Ultimately, what is that nervous system that is able to experience the unified field? If we go back to the unified field chart, why is this system able to experience the unified? Why is our nervous system able to experience this unified field and understand it and understand the whole universe? It's because within us are all the dynamics of the universe present. Within our biology, within our brain, within our nervous system, are contained all the laws of nature in such a way that we are a reflection of the whole universe in a small, little body that we have and the brain that we have. It contains all the dynamics of the whole universe and how the universe manifests. And so if it is already within us, that's why we can understand it. Because we look inside, which is what we say we use logic. And when we use logic, it corresponds to the universe. It corresponds to how the universe works. Why is that? It's because it's already within us. So the research that was undertaken on Veda and human physiology shows exactly that, as you have heard, that Veda is the same as our human body, that our human body is a reflection of Veda, and therefore we are totality, we are wholeness, as Veda says, as is the atom, so is the universe, as all religions say in the world, you know, in Christianity we say that man was created in the image of God, or the kingdom of heaven is within you, and in Islam, and also it says, you know, consider yourself to be an atom in which the whole universe has folded itself. And in the Veda it says many, many times and repeatedly that every one of us is cosmic, that every one of us contains totality, that every one of us is the whole universe in a small form, in a way. And so because we are that, we are able to understand ourselves and the universe, and because we are that, we are able to make our life better and more evolutionary, and ultimately, if our nervous system is fully developed, we can live truly perfection in life. So that's the promise of the knowledge. So as we said, in Veda and Vedic literature, there are these 40 aspects, and we have given example of yoga and nyaya in the tape. And the Ramayana is one of the aspects in Itihasa. It's a story. We talked about laws of nature and how the laws of nature manifest themselves and how they come out, etc. And how Veda explains them from different angles. One angle is in architecture, one angle is in this or that or the other. There is one angle to talk about the laws of nature, and that is story by a story, telling a story. So the story of the Ramayana, which I said is a specific king that goes and has lots of things happen, it's a big, huge, long story, is a story of the laws of nature also, a story of how nature develops. It's a story of how our body develops, how our brain gets formed and transformed, and how it leads us from one stage in our life to another, and how ultimately we can get even enlightened. So the research that I have done with Maharshi's guidance is to look at the story as if it is a description of the human story in terms of its inner development also, not only outer development, not only in terms of consciousness and mind and behavior, but also in terms of physical structures, how our body develops, how you have the cerebellum, you have the cerebrum, you have the thalamus, you have, you know, these things. And what is fascinating is that our body is an exact replica of this story, to such an extent that you can find the rivers, you can find the trees, you can find the monkeys, you can find the animals, you can find the ponds, you can find everything within the body. And you find these relationships between them to be also very real. So that we really embody the totality of this natural law when it is explained from the standpoint of a story in the Ramayana, or from the standpoint of all of its different values of function, for example, Nyaya, distinguishing and deciding, Yoga, unifying. If you look at it from any angle, you find that all the Veda is within our human body, and our body embodies, contains totality of natural law. So that explains why ultimate subjectivity, which means our ultimate ability to know if our nervous system is fully developed, is really ultimate objectivity, which is ultimately the knowledge that we can gather through objective means of experimentation and science. We know that science has many limitations because it has to isolate things one from the other. In order to be able to study a parameter, you have to take the variables that are playing together to create a certain effect. Because if you have 10 things that can, you know, somebody fall sick, and they are all happening at the same time, and so you don't know which one of them is the main factor or what causes this. So you have to isolate, and then try one factor, one variable, and see how it helps you to determine, yes, if I make the person, you know, eat this kind of food more often, then they will be more healthy. But you say, but this person is also exercising, they're also drinking, they're also smoking, they live in a polluted city, this and the other. So how can you determine that it's that one thing that you have changed that caused the result? So in science, what do? We isolate, say, okay, take 100 people, make them live in exactly the same circumstances, and change that one variable. And then you see the result. And that is quite effective in finding results for specific values. But the complexity of the situation is so big that science becomes extremely slow in finding things. Because you cannot, if you take one factor, and if it is 5 factors that are contributing, it's an exponentially bigger and more complex relationship that leads to an outcome. So science is limited in this kind of sense. But the human brain, which goes to the unified field, to the source of everything, is able to understand things from a holistic perspective. And that's why ultimately we say that we go back to the self, we go back to who we are, we go back to the unified field, which is the source of the whole universe. And that is how we are able to make our life more holistic, more complete, more balanced, and make decisions that are in tune with the laws of nature. So that's basically the background of the whole study and situation. And I feel it's more important to highlight this value than to necessarily go through the specific characters too much. But if you like more examples or you are interested in any specific value of Veda or the Ramayana, I'll be happy to illustrate it and talk about it to you. But the main thing is to understand what are we talking about? Because what does it mean that Ramayana in our human physiology? It's a story. There is a king, it has a wife, he has, you know, there are cousins and sisters and brothers and children and fighters and demons, and it gets very complicated with all kinds of monkeys that fly and things that happen, and the story becomes a little bit ununderstandable. And then when you look at it physiologically, you can see that the monkeys flying are things that travel in your body, like the hormones, that, you know, the king is the place where in the brain there is a dominance, it's a master gland or something that determines the behavior of other aspects of the body, that the rivers are like the arteries, and like the veins or the mothers are the nourishing value, and like that, and there is a relationship between them. And therefore we find that the whole dynamics of Ramayana is actually physically, physiologically present in our body, as well as in our behavior and the behavior of our society. So that is, in a nutshell, again, a summary of the principles behind the relationship of what has been found and how it created this research, which shows on the one hand that Veda is total knowledge, it has it, but that is on the level of structure and function, not on the level of meaning necessarily and translation. It shows that we have Veda within us. That's why David Lynch was saying, not toys are us, Veda is us, because physically we truly are that. And it shows the dignity of a human being, that when we say man was created, humans were created in the image of God, we now can understand what this means. When we hear that the whole universe is present within us, we can have an understanding of what this means. So we're really cosmic, and we can make a difference if we allow our nervous system to develop to its maximum potential, and we have the ability to know and experience and live perfection in life. And that has been already tried with thousands, millions of people around the world who practice transcendental meditation. So I said that we would like to have a very interactive meeting with you. So far it has been a monologue, but I think that kind of background presentation, I felt it's good to lay down so that we are on the same wavelengths, if you like. and then I'm happy to take your questions and illustrate any point that you are interested in. Maybe Raja, Antonio, if those who like to ask questions, maybe they can stand on the side and then we pass the microphone, otherwise you're going to be running around. Ah, okay, 2 microphones that we can pass. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Hi, hola, I'm
Hola.
Ruben, and I graduated from the TTC, from teaching training in September. I spoke with you regarding transcendental meditation and sports. So first I would like to thank the people who helped me to go to TTC, especially Jose Luis Escos. And now what I wanted to ask is 2 things. The first thing is sports is huge and it has so much power, but there is one experience that can truly change the way sports is understood nowadays. And that's called in the world of sports the experience of the zone. It's the flow experience. So I would like to know where in the Vedas or in the Ramayana is explained that kind of experience that the athlete has when it reaches that state. Secondly, I heard from the introductory video, and I knew that you were guided by Maharishi during all the research, and right now leading the world plan for TM and sports. And I'm going to be studying everything, and I'm going to be deep into it, but I truly need guidance in order to relate and to coordinate Veda with sports and to be able to switch the paradigm within sports for the athletes to see that sport is not just what they think it is. It's a way of gaining enlightenment, it's a way of gaining peace in the world. So what I would like is ask you for the guidance in order to be able to do what you did with Maharishi, that I could do it with you. So those are my 2 questions. Thank you so much for coming here to Spain in one of the most important days of the year for Spain and for the world. because we have a huge sport event today. Yeah. Real Madrid against Atletico Madrid is going to be worldwide. So thank you for coming here and thank you for being with us.
Yeah, Spain has won the World Cup. Huh? Wonderful.
Just one point, technical point. It seems that the translation has changed to Canal 2, so en castellano. So, perdón, parece que ha cambiado la traducción al Canal 2. Entonces, los que no podéis oír están en el Canal 2.
Okay. Let's talk about the zone first, and we can see in the Veda at different times when, particularly, I think, if you want to describe the zone from Ramayana's perspective, is when Hanuman, who is considered in the Veda and in the Ramayana as the most powerful person, sports-wise, and in many ways. And Hanuman was said to be a monkey that has extreme powers, but he is really an incarnation of huge power. And at one time, even Ram was being hit by an arrow and by a situation which is very difficult. They used some magic and some herbs on him and all of that. And he was in a state which was a little bit needing kind of that power and that energy. And so Hanuman went to a mountain and he brought the best herbs that are there available. But he was told to go and find a specific herb. And he thought he found it, but he wasn't sure which one it is. So instead of bringing some herbs and then finding it's not the right one, he decided to bring the whole mountain. So he carried the mountain, and then he found it will take too long to come there. So he decided actually to fly. And so he was actually flying with the mountain to bring this value to Ram. And the technique he used every time that he was feeling like weak or is going to fall or how is he going to fly, he doesn't have wings, but he wanted to fly, is to go back to himself. Bar, it says in the Ramayana, go back to the self, go back to Ram, go back to wholeness. Because Ram represents wholeness. And when wholeness is a bit put under situation of doubt or trouble, like Ram was under this kind of situation, then what do? You bring back the whole physiology to wholeness. And so what this powerful structure did is go back to the self. So whenever he said he went back to wholeness in his mind, that is the zone. Now what's interesting is that Hanuman represents the hormonal system in our body, all the hormones. And so when all the hormones are working in a perfect way, based on a balance of wholeness, then you can say you enter the zone. So the zone is not one place, it's a holistic reality of an entire integration of the body. So it takes the proper hormones, the proper nervous system to work in a proper way, and then you become almost dissociated from the action, and the action happens by itself, and you are like witnessing. You're seeing yourself running, you're seeing yourself doing things, and that is least effort because you are in wholeness and the body works perfectly. So when you let the body work by itself in a complete way, in a sense, and you are established in wholeness, then wholeness permeates. What wholeness means is all parts of the brain working together in a perfect order. That's what an athlete wants. An athlete also, of course, wants the proper preparation, the muscle strength, the proper everything. But once this is done, in order for all of this to work perfectly and not one muscle disagreeing with another muscle or one aspect of the body disagreeing with another aspect of the body, you want an integration. You want an integration. That is the zone. In the zone, you feel witness. You are not concerned by this. And you can just see yourself. It's a fabulous feeling. I had it when I used a little bit of exercise. Nothing like you or the teams that are playing today, but every one of us had some athletic experiences, and I know what it means. And that is really what it is. It means bringing the whole body to a state of integration so that the arm works well with the foot, works well with the head, works well with the eyes that can see this, that can decide about this. And all of this integration requires the nervous system to be very efficient. Because if you see something and by the time you see it, you have to think what to decide and how to use your muscle and how to hit the ball would be gone, will be already in the other goal. So what you want is that this becomes really fast and automatic. And that's how it works. And that's why people like you do and who practice transcendental meditation, they have that ability to enter the zone in a much more powerful way and to be more efficient in their activity. And at the same time, it allows all the hormones, all the endorphins, all the things that create that feeling to be balanced and act well. And so to do that, we all have all the literature, you have all the great leaders, and they can work with you, we can work together and make sure that all these teams become the best.
Last thing. The point in asking you that is that I don't want to do my interpretation of it. I don't want to be me doing that. I want it to be read as in one way and structured there. I want it to be like that. Because I could do my own thing and start speaking about it and go here and there making speeches or whatever, but that's not the point. The point is that you took everything from the brain. You took the physiology and you had Maharishi, and then you mixed everything perfectly in the same way that he would like. So, and that's the point why I was asking that.
Yeah, we can work on sports. I have a lot to learn about sports and how it works. But this is one aspect that many of our leaders can work on as we have said, and I think they have helped you to put the research together and try to create pamphlets and explain that. Beautiful.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.
Llamo Paco Bejarano. Quiero salir traducir.
Yeah, I'll translate as he speaks.
Okay.
Mi cuestión es la siguiente. Debería o debe haber un momento en que lo inmanifiesto se transforma en manifiesto y lo subjetivo en objetivo. Ese momento podría ser el ámbito de actuación o de trabajo de los sutras, y si tiene que ver algo, tendría que ver algo con lo que se denomina la partícula de Dios o la partícula de Higgs o el átomo de Higgs. Gracias.
Okay, now let's see if I can translate that one. A ver, Paco. Is there a point when the unmanifest becomes manifest and subjectivity becomes objectivity, becomes manifest objectivity, where...
Ese momento es el ámbito de actuación o de trabajo de los sutras,
where in that environment of actuation, of acting of the sutras,
y si tendría que ver con lo que se ha dado en denominar la partícula de Higgs o el átomo de Higgs o la partícula de Dios.
and if there is any relation in that level with the Higgs boson or the God particle, as it's also called.
Thank you.
So if we look at this chart, we see the unified field and then all of these particles, including the Higgs boson, emerging at this level. Now, the Higgs boson is a particle that acts almost within the unified field in a sense that allows things to have mass and all of that. I'm not a physicist, so I cannot go into great lengths of scientific description of it, but it is one of the potential particles that are at the very basic level of the expression of the unified field. What we can say in one way of looking at it is there is a gap almost between the unmanifest unified field and the manifest levels of creation. But also today, even scientists are saying that even the unified field itself can be even experienced in a sense by going outward beyond the universe and seeing the background fluctuations of the universe. And this has been a recent study where if you look at silence and void and emptiness itself, you find that it is not a state of nothingness. It is a state where there are fluctuations within it. So it has kind of a dynamism within it. Now, this is one perception. When this perception is from a physical perspective. If you want the reality of things, exactly how they are, it's that nothing actually ever manifests. It's only a point of view. The reality is that the unified field stays the unified field, that consciousness is consciousness. But the fact that there is dynamics within it allows us to see the unified field from different perspectives. And these different perspectives are what we call the manifest universe. So in reality, what we see as our body, as our brain, as our world, as our friends, as our objects, they're only consciousness. It's all consciousness. But because our senses, the mechanisms of perception, have a certain pattern of perception, we see things in a certain way. You know, the dog hears wavelengths that is beyond our ears. You know, some animals, they can see things that we cannot see. And the range of colors and the range of light that we can see is limited. There are things we don't see at all. For example, we experience gravity, but we cannot see it through the eyes. So this room seems, you know, otherwise empty, But gravity is there. There are gravitons, there are wave functions that are there. There are electromagnetic waves. If you put a radio here and turn it on, you will hear the music, or a television. Where is this coming from? It's coming from those waves that are in the air, that are in the atmosphere. Suppose your eyes could actually see them, what would this room look like? It will look very dense, it will look very different. If your eyes were able to see the magnetic field rather than electromagnetic field, this will be very opaque. It will be very solid. So this is to say that perception of what things are and perception of reality depends on our senses. And our senses have limited abilities, which whatever they are, in terms of sensory perception. But in terms of actual reality, that is the Vedic ultimate reality, is that everything is consciousness. And in this consciousness, there are fluctuations which are not manifest fluctuations, they are unmanifest. And these fluctuations allow for the perception, if you look at it from one angle or another, of differences. So the manifest, when you say manifest coming out of unmanifest, you are saying one point of view coming out of another point of view. So the point of view of one angle gives you this perception, the point of view of another angle gives you another perception. And that is the reality of things. And this is not a light topic, it's a very heavy topic, and it was discussed very heavily between the scientists Schrödinger, and Einstein and this and that. And they were discussing, like, if I don't see the moon, you think the moon will be there? Or the moon cannot exist without an observer, because it needs a collapse of the wave function. And the wave function is undetermined. So if you take a particle, the particle can be anywhere in the universe, has a potentiality of being at any moment, anywhere. But when you observe it, it collapses into a specific particle, not a wave anymore, a wave function anymore with probabilities. So this collapse of the wave function is a big mystery still in science today. Who collapses the wave function? What collapses the wave function? How does the collapse of wave function take place? And the reality is that it's all a perception, it's all a point of view, and it's all a point of view within consciousness. I know this topic is very complex and delicate, but I hope I answered whichever amount of explanation few minutes can give.
Primero quería expresarle el honor que siento al poder hacerle la pregunta.
First, I would like to express the honor that I have in being able to express my question.
He podido conocer los dos libros que presentó, de la fisiología y del Ramayana, y es evidente que hay una correlación y he conocido y aprendido de ello.
I've been able to look through the books of the Ramayan and the physiology, and it's evident that there's a correlation between them.
La ciencia médica ha conseguido saber la etiología de muchas enfermedades.
Medical science has been able to know the cause of many illnesses.
Pero aún existen algunas que no conocemos la etiología.
But there's still some illnesses in which we don't know the causes.
La pregunta que me viene, que creo que es obvia, es saber si en el estudio literal de la literatura védica,
And the question which I have, which could be quite obvious, is that in the literal study of the Vedic literature,
es posible descubrir la etiología de las patologías que no se conocen.
would it be possible to know the cause of the illnesses which we don't have an answer for?
The main cause is imbalance with the laws of nature, which means there are laws of nature that create the universe, and if there are things that are out of balance and due to whatever action or behavior or food or virus or whatever reason that disturb this balance, then you have a situation which we call disease. And the more the disturbance is big, the more the disease is serious, if you like. So that's the basic general condition. Now, in terms of particulars, for example, this particular disease, cancer, or the other, it's also related to the same thing, but it is more fundamental in terms of the losing connection with the intelligence that is within natural law and the memory of holding back to the self, to the wholeness, in a more complete way. In the Ramayana, there are situations where Ram is fighting and he corrects things. So these anomalies that we find in the physiology are related to those situations that we find in the Ramayana. For example, Ravana was a big demon who was living on his own, and he didn't care about anything except making himself happy and better and dissociated with anything. And he tried to take Sita, and he abducted Sita as the queen, the wife of Ram, who is representing in the Ramayana the heart and the blood vessels and the arteries that nourish the body. And so we find, for example, that Ravana could be a kind of a cancer, really, and the abducting of the Sita is like taking away the blood vessels or the nourishment to itself, and then growing against the natural wholeness of the physiology, because they're not connected with the intelligence of the whole body. See, when a cancer cell grows, it's a cell that doesn't listen to the body anymore. It starts growing and doesn't listen to what is required in terms of size, in terms of proportions, and all of that. And so these are cells that go wild because they don't listen to the body. They have lost the ability to refer back to the wholeness of the physiology. That is the same as Ravana. And so reorganizing those aspects, bringing them back to the original order, for example, that's present in the DNA, which requires that your one's finger grows only that much, that don't keep growing all the time. And you know that this part of the body grows, the liver grows and stops growing. But then suddenly you have some cells that decide they don't want to listen. And that is really what cancer is. So these might be some changes in the intelligence of it, in the DNA of it, that makes it just go wild. And so all of these issues in the Ramayana, where you have a disease, you have a problem, you have Rama fighting this particular person, and all of that is explained in terms of pathology and why the physiology has to bring back anything that goes out and away from its natural functioning, bring it back to the holistic functioning, so that the part is satisfied, but also the whole is satisfied together and brings more fulfillment.
En todos los niveles está absorbida en los significados, en los contenidos.
But the reality in education these days is that it's completely absorbed in the meaning and in the content.
Siempre estamos atrapados en valores parciales de conocimiento.
We are always trapped in partial values of knowledge.
Y nuestros alumnos crecen en primaria, secundaria, en la universidad, en diferentes universidades.
And our children, our students are growing up in high school and universities in different areas of education.
Pero están perdidos en valores limitados y parciales de conocimiento.
But they're lost in the partial values of knowledge.
Entonces aquí uno toma conciencia del valor holístico que está faltando en nuestro mundo.
So here we can partake of the holistic knowledge that's missing in our world.
Yo quiero preguntar qué valor tiene esto para la educación moderna, incorporar este conocimiento práctico de esa visión holística de la vida.
So my question is, what is the value of being able to incorporate this holistic knowledge into our educational system?
En la educación hablamos de lo que el alumno tiene que saber, pero no sabe nada de sí mismo.
In education, we always talk about what the student has to learn for himself, but we never teach him anything about himself.
Yo veo que el mundo es un problema educativo, es una educación incompleta.
I see that the world is giving an incomplete knowledge.
¿Cómo esto ha podido estar oculto tanto tiempo?
How has it been hidden for so long?
Beautiful. I think you really gave the answer also at the same time. Basically, of course, thank you. It's a beautiful comment from an experienced teacher and professor. So the answer is really all that we are trying to explain and say is that our ability, if we make the nervous system healthy and balanced, our ability to have a holistic perception, a complete understanding, rises and becomes really a help that is very profound in making life significant and a better life to be lived. And I agree with you absolutely that education today is mostly concentrated on knowledge, meaning information, rather than knowing wholeness or totality. So the students get to know a number of things, and they put them on a piece of paper at the end of the year, and they take a diploma, and then they are considered educated. They can be very practical. Of course, practical informational knowledge is important, but what is more important is to develop the individual so that the instrument of knowledge, which is our nervous system, which is ourself, is herself or himself developed. And that is how one can really take most advantage of specific knowledge or informational knowledge. And that's how one can make best out of one's life. We have all known, and maybe ourselves individually, some of us have experienced that you can learn a certain field of science or knowledge, and if you know the basic dynamics within it, it will help you directly or indirectly into other fields of knowledge, because you develop a culture, you culture the human nervous system. So even this partial knowledge here and there helps to culture, and culture is more than information. Culturing the nervous system and exposing the nervous system to the holistic value of natural law creates a result which is more than just the sum of individual parts of knowledge or information. So there is no question that modern education does give something. Of course, we are all, everyone has been through education, and people get educated and grow, but it's a slower, much slower process in terms of creating happiness for the individual, wholeness of life, creating an individual who's able to do the best for themselves and therefore society. Not only just success on some surface level, and the life inside is not happy, is not fulfilled, it's tortured, problems and anxieties and like that. So we put a good face and we struggle and work, but inside we don't feel happy, we don't feel fulfilled. So that fulfillment and happiness comes from full development, not just from individual information that help us to function well in a specific field or another, but rather to develop the full potential of the individual. We are fond of saying in our education that whereas there is now the hope that you can have total knowledge in a university, so the university can give total knowledge in different kinds of ways, different departments, that is fragmented here and there, and then the students get this one piece, and the other gets that piece, and the other gets that piece. And we say we want total knowledge in one brain, not in the university. Total knowledge in one individual, in one person. And how we get total knowledge in one person? By developing that brain, that physiology that we're talking about, which already contains the basics of total knowledge, which is the whole universe, and bringing us back to our nature, bringing us back to who we are, and opening up all these reserves of the brain creates a situation where we can do the right decisions, act in the right way, and that's how we can fulfill our goals in life. Because how many variables there are when one wants to decide, do I take this job or not? Do I marry this person or not? Do I make this situation happen or not? How do I answer this question, difficult question in life, or this other one? There are many, many, many factors, and if you want to analyze them individually, it is impossible to really make a decision that is as holistic that it will be the best for oneself and the best for society. The only way to do it is to go back to the home of all the laws of nature, go back to wholeness. Wholeness is the unified field, and that we have the ability to go there. And from there, then spontaneously we can do right action. That's why we call it spontaneous right action, the ability to think and decide in a spontaneous way, in the way that is most holistic and most evolutionary. For that to happen, one has to be established in that holistic field, which takes into consideration all the variables of life. Because the unified field is the source of all the laws of nature and makes them all work and act in a holistic, evolutionary way. So we go to that source, establish it within ourselves, and then all the other aspects become automatic and more fulfilling for the individual and for society.
Voy a preguntar yo. Me llamo Pedro Calero, soy el embajador de los indios, de los pandis védicos de India en España.
I'm Pedro Calero. I'm the ambassador for the Indian Maharishi Vedic Pandits in Spain.
Y mi pregunta es sobre medicina, ¿no?
And my question is about medicine.
Hace 20 años hicieron un tour gente de India para la curación instantánea para distintas enfermedades.
About 20 years ago, there was a tour of Vaidyas here for instant cures of different illnesses.
Y quería saber si ese servicio está disponible, porque estaba en investigación, ¿no? De hecho, yo me beneficié de algunas cosas, pero otras no tuvieron resultado, ¿no?
And I'm wondering if this is still available, because I understand it was under investigation. They were doing some research on it. Some things worked very well for me, and other things didn't have any results.
Y simplemente quería saber si el servicio de estos tratamientos de curación instantánea en el día, con 1 o 2 sesiones, siguen estando disponibles. Gracias.
And I wanted to know if the service of instant cures was still available, and practicing it once or twice a day.
Yeah, we still have Vedic vibration, Vedic sound, and all of these things are available. You know, instant cure is something that is relative, you know, instant within a minute or a few days. As long as there is cure, time is relative. But these are all available and are being also more developed. It takes time to collect things and put them together. But this knowledge has a very practical aspect in terms of application, because we know what each part of the body is and what vibrational sounds from the Veda correspond to that part of the body. And so it's like a harmonic process, or a resonance, if you like. You vibrate one string of the guitar, and this in Spain is very famous. And then the other string that is at the same wavelengths will also vibrate. So when you create a sound, and the part of the body that corresponds to that sound helps to renormalize that aspect of the body, and in a harmonic, in a resonance way, and reestablishes balance. So this is, of course, available, and it's being more and more structured. Very good. So everyone seems to be satisfied. It's great to be with you. And there are no more questions. Yes? It's okay, we have time.
Okay. So, thank you for coming. I studied in MUM. I graduated 2 years ago in Maharishi University, a Master in Vedic Science. And I would like to thank you for this gift. I studied the Vedas, the correlation between Vedas and physiology, your book, your first book, and really impressed me somehow. And I remember I studied with Acharya Veda, that book, for 1 month in the course. And it was beautiful, everything. So my question is, he was really in touch with Maharishi during the process of the previous book that you have. And he described as nice experiences with him, like Maharishi asked him for some Veda literature and he was chanting to him privately during the night or at any moment. So I would like to ask you, how was your experience by working hand by hand with Maharishi? And this one question. My second question is, which book was more fulfilling for you, this one or the previous one? Which one you enjoyed the most?
Both were as enjoyable. The first one was very much with Maharishi, really. Every part was constantly, he was really available to this, and it was in 1993 when the whole year I kind of, and a little before 1992, that I worked on Veda and Human Physiology. And there really I was every single day with Maharishi working on this. He would do his things and then come back to this. I would be working, he would go do meetings and then come back to me and we would do things. And some days, even I remember a few days, we worked 16 hours non-stop. And he was really talking about the Veda, and in my mind I was translating this into physiology. I put myself back like at school, and I felt he's my professor telling me about the human body. And then, but he's using another language. And that was my mindset. It's like, this is how I will do it. Just think the word he explains and translate them into physiology. Of course, it took a while because you don't know what word means what. It's like trying to decipher a foreign language that you have never known. And then, you know, if you start speaking to me in Spanish, I know a little bit, but not very much, but because I know Latin languages very well, French and Latin, it's easy for me to pick up on many of the words. And so it was kind of the same, like somebody's telling you something, Nyaya is the lamp at the door. That's what Maharishi would say. Nyaya is the lamp at the door. It sits between the inside and the outside, and it shows the specific and the holistic, and it has so many values, and this is how it works, etc., etc. And then I have to find what is the lamp at the door, what is the lamp at the door in the brain. And then I would try in my mind different translations, the thalamus, the hypothalamus, this one, that one, this one, until the one that fits all the description comes together, and I say, yeah, this must be this one. And then I go to the books and check again the different parts and divisions. So it was absolutely a most fascinating time, particularly having a chance to be with such an enlightened master and teacher. And so it was really a beautiful time where I didn't think about sleeping or eating or anything, just being, and it was all beautifully happening by itself. So of course it was magical. The Ramayana also was great because it was a time when I was a lot in silence after Maharishi made me the Raja and all of that. He put me for several months in total silence. He was living on the upper floor and I was on the lower floor. And I didn't see anybody, didn't talk to anybody for several months. And then I just put my mind on the Ramayana. And Maharishi would talk to me from time to time. I would meet him, but not as intensely. So I would report to him what's happening. And it was more like an internal time. But it developed itself gradually to become also a book. It took much longer to publish the Ramayana because many aspects of the Ramayana were not yet fully even elaborated and understood scientifically, meaning there were parts of the brain that we didn't know yet exactly how they work. And so I was keep waiting for the research to come up to see this and that. Today, of course, the brain is much more known than in what we knew in the 1990s. And therefore, it really gave more ability to make associations. But it was, of course, a most profound time and holistic time and very enlightening.
Gracias por haber venido en primer lugar a este encuentro a compartir con nosotros.
First, thank you for coming here and sharing your knowledge with us.
Mi nombre es Juan, he venido desde el País Vasco.
My name is Juan, I've come from the Basque country.
Y en esta charla ha salido en varias ocasiones que estamos hechos a imagen y semejanza de Dios.
And it's been mentioned several times in this talk that we've been made in the image of God.
Mi pregunta es, ¿estamos aquí fruto de un proceso de evolución? ¿Venimos del cielo? ¿Cómo aparecemos aquí en el planeta?
My question is, have we come here through a process of evolution? Do we come from heaven? How is it that we've ended up here?
Both together. We come both together because evolution is not a process that means it's not in tune with the laws of nature. To the contrary, evolution means that the process of growth and development happens in accordance with the laws of nature. And even in the Vedic literature, they say how wholeness, like Vishnu, is considered as wholeness, dynamic value, how wholeness came at different times in different shapes. You have like different incarnations of wholeness. And it starts really in an evolutionary way as we know evolution to be, from the fish to the, you know, half sea, half water, this to the turtle, to this, to this, to this. And it really takes the body into these different levels of development. So we are a product of evolution, we can say this, there is no question. But this product of evolution is the product of natural law, which is the will of God, the heavenly desire in a sense, because you say that the laws of nature are the will of God. So if you call it will of God from a religious or spiritual perspective, and you call it the laws of nature from a scientific perspective, it's the same thing, because the laws of nature are the will of God, because creation is the will of God. Now, this has happened gradually or suddenly. It doesn't really matter that much, you know, because in terms of time, it's very relative, the time perception. So you can say we came very fast. Yeah, very fast. What is million years in a number of years of the history of the universe that we got to the point where we are? It just took the time to make it. So we did suddenly get parachuted from heaven, you say, but it took 1,000,000 years. So that's only the, you know, the difference in perspective. And I was told Basque is a very spiritual area also. It goes back to ancient, very ancient tradition. Wonderful. Thank you for listening. And I love this area, and I'm sure I'll come back. Hope to see you again and have you all enlightened and society living in prosperity and happiness and peace and bliss all the time. Jai Gurudev.
Qué traducción. Con emociones incluidas.
Sí, claro, claro.
Yes, you can give it. Yes.